assume I'm a CISO,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
you're advising me. Could you give me some kind of more strategic approaches to solving security compliance requirements?
Yeah. I think that one of the things that I I like to tell CISOs a lot is that these standards don't replace, you designing a security posture that matches your business. So just because the standard exists doesn't mean that we have to let go of the idea that you design the security posture. And strategically, one of the best ways to understand what security to put in place or the scope, if I were talking about a product, what's the scope of our product? Um, the scope of that security practice should really match the risks that you're confronted with. And I'll give you an example. We have some customers that are implementing security practices, but let's say they're a consultancy. And so one of the things that they're not going to have to put in security possibly is around change management because they don't manage the production releases necessarily of the customers they work for. Those customers manage those production releases. But
Mhm.
certainly in a lot of the standards, there's an area that talks about change management. It's just not applicable to them when they go in for audit or assessment, and the auditor or assessor will identify that. So scope still matters, right? You
Right.
don't have to meet every aspect of the standard, and strategically designing the right security posture for your business is the most efficient one to operate, the most effective one to operate. And also, I think from a cultural perspective, if you can eliminate the security theater, people are more bought into the value of the operation. So that's one thing we talk a lot with CISOs, that we're not going to take away your ability to do that design work. The next thing we say is that the decision on which standards to implement and the roadmap of implementation has everything to do with what your salespeople are dealing with. So you need to go talk to them. Are the buyers asking for SOC 2? Are they asking for HIPAA? Are they asking for ISO 27001? Do you have an initiative into Australia? And there's a unique standard in Australia that you're going to have to deal with to open that up. And it puts you in the mode of understanding what the business roadmap looks like and setting a product roadmap or a compliance roadmap that kind of matches that. And so those are two things that we talk to CISOs about a fair bit, and also kind of giving them some power back and also understanding how to, minimize the amount of standards they have to go after. I had a conversation this week, and I've seen this a couple of times where we had a CISO that was interested in implementing all of NIST, and I said, why
Right.
would you want to implement the entire NIST standard? I think there's more than 1,500 controls, and parts of it deal with, top secret information at the Department of Defense. And they said, well, we figure if we do that one, then we've covered everything else. I was like, I don't know that that's the best strategy, right? Like it could take you years and years to get there on something like that. It's very complicated. Whereas maybe you just want to get an easier standard first and then, add other standards. And there's a Venn diagram to these standards, right? They're about 80% cover each other in a way. So usually, and this is part of our technology solution, is we make it really apparent what the delta is between what you're practicing today and that next standard that you might want to achieve. So you don't feel like you're recreating your security practice with every new compliance initiative.
Right. So it's kind of just finding that balance between future-proofing yourself and also not spending too much.
That's right.
Getting
Yes.
stuff that maybe you don't need or wouldn't be applicable. But yeah, no, it's interesting you say that it's kind of the sales guys. That's myself that the CISOs and the team should be having conversations with, because I think, like I said earlier, I have a lot of those types of conversations, and yeah, it is industry specific. And so, you find in finance, you'll find a lot more. So PCI DSS, everyone's doing ISO 27001. Everyone's doing GDPR. I mainly do UK and Europe, so don't touch HIPAA. But there are applicable medical ones here in the EU as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the history of kind of software to help solve this problem.
Right.
Initially, concerns around these types of compliance or meeting certain types of compliance around security was really only applicable to the largest of organizations. And they did it from a liability perspective, right? So there was a lot of legal liability concern like GDPR. We think about GDPR as a liability concern.
Right.
You might not get tested on it. You don't want to get sued because you've not had effective practices in place. And so it represents a liability issue. Where something like ISO 27001 is a certification, that's a sales asset. So that's
Mhm.
that's not necessarily a liability, or that's not the biggest reason you're going to do it so you can sell into organizations. In the early days, when the concern was mostly liability, we saw very big organizations kind of adopting governance, risk, and compliance solutions like Archer that were very complicated, kind of required a team of internal auditors to operate and function, and very expensive too. And so, well before StrikeGraph was ever built, we had that upper end of the marketplace. There's a fair number of tools there. I think our favorite today at the enterprise scale, LogicGate has a very good solution, but LogicGate does about 100 million in revenue. They only have approximately about 200 customers, so their price point is like really high on the scale. But that left out the whole mid-market and the SMB market from a GRC solution that really worked well for them. And combined this with a perfect storm of these enterprise organizations realizing that 70% of their data breaches were coming from third-party vendors. They started pushing down on those third-party vendors to require them to meet some certification or independent assessment. And it infected like open source code will in a way, right? Then those mid-market players decided they needed to ask their vendors and their vendors and their vendors. So it just kind of infected the marketplace that we need to go hit these particular standards and outcomes. And the StrikeGraph solution is really designed to be enterprise strength governance, risk, and compliance solution with the ease of use that a mid-market company needs to achieve the certification outcome. And if I had to encapsulate what we do, StrikeGraph is a SaaS platform. We allow our customers to design and distribute and validate a security posture operation. So on our platform, there is a module for a risk assessment. The risk assessment system recommends control operations to mitigate particular risks that someone has seen. We have a large database of controls. Each of our customers is designing a unique security practice. We're not a checklist. They're deciding what control operations match their business. And then we recommend evidence collection or how to validate that the control was operated so that you are able to say, yeah, we did the encryption we expected. I could see that, or we got the acceptable use policy sign that we needed. Well, once we built that as a solution, what we realized is we had all the data to do much of the testing work ourselves. So one of the very unique things about StrikeGraph in this marketplace is that we deliver a fair number of audits and certifications directly to our customers. Today, we're doing a lot of SOC 2 delivery for those certifications, and we're expanding to HIPAA this quarter as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's interesting what you said about the way that it kind of trickled down from enterprise, and then the third-party vendors were the threat. I was reading an article recently that it's one of the number one trends for CISOs to be looking out for, that third-party supply chain risk. Other parts of the supply chain being attacked as a threat surface for the bigger organizations.
Yeah,
and just locking those down as well. So I guess that starts with having that visibility around where the gaps are, making sure that they are compliant as well.